Hello everyone and welcome to That Was Genius. This is a funny history podcast by Tom Berry and Sam Datta, exploring little known stories and corners of the past. We'll get to the history shortly, but first a couple of minutes of what we ominously call, quote, witty banter, highlights of our pre-recording chat, which usually ends up being mostly toilet humour.
Oh, well, I was thinking this the other day, what it would have been like to be alive in the year 1111.
Yes, I think Busted sung a song about it, didn't they?
Did they?
Yes. So I've been to the year 1111. Not much has changed, but everyone's dying of cholera, and your great-great-great-grandmother has no teeth and has been burned as a witch. It's a classic. It's a cracking ditty, Tom.
Yeah, it's a goodie. Well, yeah, cracking busted content. I was just going to ask you what you've been up to.
Well, I'm frantically reaching for the reams of paper that are being spat out of my printer at the moment after finally getting the fucker working.
What's printed on them?
God knows.
Wanker, leave me alone. I was asleep. I'm hungover. I had a big one with a telephone last night. Me and a photocopier went nuts.
Ended up shagging a fax machine. MILF. Actually, filth, yeah.
For MILF.
Beautiful. Hello and welcome to That Was Genius, the little history podcast careering into 2021, in which Tom, who's over there,
hello,
drinking a wanky beer.
It is a wanky beer.
And Sam, over here, drinking an Italian lager. Unreliable. I don't know if that segue made the cut before, but we'll leave that in without context. Discuss history stories on a theme each week. We decide the theme a week in advance, or just before Christmas in this case, but everything else that happens is a complete surprise. What's our topic this week, Tom?
Well, I hope I'm right with this. It's silly military inventions, is it not?
It is silly military inventions that actually worked.
Very they're supposed to have worked. Shit. I didn't get that bit. No, everything I've got didn't work. Oh well. No, fine. Actually, no, it did a little bit.
Well, it would have been called a success at the time due to propaganda, so, roll with
That's
it.
That's true, actually.
You can just call me an enemy agent for doubting.
Enemy agent for doubting.
Yeah, it's an odd name. Right, yes. I think we should probably get right into it, shouldn't we, Tom? How did you find your research this week?
Oh, my research was fine. Absolutely fine. This was an excellent choice by a listener. Plenty of silly military inventions made themselves known to me within minutes of beginning my research.
Excellent.
Easy peasy.
Well, I'll tell you what we did have in terms of audience feedback. We did have an episode suggestion from Amy, and she suggested failed despots as a theme.
Yes, she did. That was a very good one.
Yeah, so I think we should, keep that on the front burner. We'll do that one sooner rather than later.
No, that'd be failed one pots on the front burner. We're going for despots.
Sorry, yes, my bad. Failed casseroles.
Our oven's broken.
Is it?
Not sure that's going to lead anywhere funny. But it is. It's a true statement.
The kids are hungry. Hey! Can I have a pizza? No. You can.
Well, you can
have a fucking stew like a Victorian.
We had to ask our neighbours to cook our pizzas last night.
Did you?
They did a good job.
Did that end in some awkward pornography? Knocking on the door asking for... Excuse me, madam, can I borrow your pizza oven?
I'm struggling to work out what that's a euphemism for. Would you like extra cheese, madam?
Or would you? Fiery on the bottom, only need 4 minutes until you're done and bubbling. Or... right, well, I'm sorry to hear that your oven's broken. Shall we warm your cockles with some history instead?
Oh, good idea.
I think you should go first, Tom.
Shall I go first? Okay, right.
I think it's your turn.
I have no idea. Right, so I went back to basics. I read 60 pages of Encyclopaedia Britannica, 1986, on military weaponry, Sam.
Oh, wow.
A whole article on military weaponry. And it's a gem of a resource, because I came across a quaint little picture of something called the Turtle, which was an early American attempt at a submarine.
Yes.
Have you heard about it?
Yes, I have, vaguely, yes.
Yeah, I thought you might, and I think many of our American listeners will have heard about it. I wouldn't be surprised to hear this popular topic in American schools, for example, but fuck it, we're going to go ahead with it and tell the story in our own unique way with silly voices and toilet humour.
Indeed.
Floppy donkey dick.
Well, I was wondering if there's going to be a flushing small animals down the toilet turtle joke coming, but no.
No. There's a turtle head opportunity here as well.
There is,
at
yes,
some point.
yeah.
If you find
Absolutely.
if that opportunity comes up, Sam, don't shy away from it.
I'll be the first
To poke your turtle's head. You'll be the first to show us your turtle's head.
Was it ever touched by a priest, the turtle?
Touch a cloth.
No.
Is that what...
Yeah, turtle head touching cloth, yes. Is where that was heading.
Anyway, so I'd like to start by just giving our listeners, as I mentioned, a high number of whom are American, some background information about an important event called the United States War of Independence. They may not have heard about it. Also known as the American Revolutionary Wars, or the American War of Independence, or the United States Revolutionary War.
Or the Rumble in Rhode Island.
Well, we're going to get onto that. Or the time that the Americans actually turned up on time for a fight.
Yes. I mean, hard not to. They were there to begin with.
Wow. And also, Sam, they were a bit more British back then, weren't they? They hadn't become all Yankified, you know, all their...
No, they were a bit more punctual, weren't
Yeah,
they? And also the first time the French turned up.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. Less sidewalks and gridiron, less garbage cans and tomatoes. Tomatoes. Less soccer and Second Amendment. All that crap. It's my right to carry 10 military-grade guns to my kid's birthday party. I don't want to go into too much detail about this because you and I have discussed this before. Our American history isn't very good. We know a lot of our listeners are Americans. They'll know a lot about their history. So just a brief summary of the start of the War of Independence. So on April the 19th, 1775, John F. Kennedy led a band of sharpshooters known as the Magnificent Seven in some battles in Massachusetts against British forces who were searching for stores of horrendously overprocessed cheese and high fructose corn syrup that the Americans were planning to fill every conceivable food type with to make everyone fat.
As we're all aware.
Yeah, we all know that. And the Magnificent Seven were then defeated quite easily by better trained British soldiers who were fighting properly and are not wandering around like the Big I Am thinking war was a big Hollywood movie with smart quips, big cigars and machine guns in each arm.
Yes, absolutely, yes. They just, good old British steel, stood in a row.
Yeah, did what they were told, shot when they needed to shoot, retreat when they're told to retreat. That's how you win wars, isn't it?
It really is, yeah, absolutely.
Just try not to fuck up. That's how you win wars. Just try not to fuck up. Keep it simple.
Yeah. Well, of course, we're fighting against, the plucky underdog, America. Forever in world affairs, the plucky underdog.
Yeah. The American forces withdrew under the leadership of Colonel Sanders and decided to catch the British off guard on Sesame Street.
You know, there are so many people who believe that. A disconcerting number of people, I reckon, if you said that Colonel Sanders was involved in the US War of Independence, would believe you.
Anyway, so after that, after the strong leadership, the plucky leadership of Colonel Sanders, the British evacuated Sesame Street and refocused on securing the very important port of Disneyland.
Yes. Not to forget, of course, before the fantastic and very successful retreat known as the Miracle on 34th Street, in which the British were able to successfully withdraw.
Yep, that's right. And that with the American forces, they were led by General Dolly Parton, weren't they?
Yes, they were, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Blessed be her name.
Anyway, I'd better repeat the last bit and just get that bit more accurate. The British evacuated Boston, refocused on securing the very important harbour of New York. American forces led by George Washington defeated. British kept control of New York harbour for the remainder of the war and used it as a base of operations. Anyway, the Battle of Long Island / the Battle of Brooklyn, which was the battle that led to the British seizing New York harbour, was one of the earliest battles in the 8-Year War and the biggest. 30,000 men fought, with the British having 20,000, the Americans having 10,000, and the British were far better trained. The Americans were already in a bad position. It didn't help that they were all farmers and hadn't really had much of an opportunity to get trained up. And George Washington famously managed to make a daring and very successful retreat from a besieged position on Brooklyn Heights late at night, catching the British off guard. Had he not managed this, the whole war could have taken a very different course.
Yes.
Wonderfully British.
We love a daring retreat.
Yes, it's wonderfully British historiography, isn't it? Yes. Getting a good spanking.
Bravely ran away.
Get a good spanking and find a way to spin it positively. Anyway, so the background information that's been provided. Let me introduce the Turtle submarine, built in 1775. And
the Turtle submarine. The Turtle submarine.
In a land where I was born.
That rebelled against the crown. Was a little man called Mel. A patriot. No.
We all like a turtle submarine. Anyway.
And anti-Semitic Australians. Anti-Semitic Australians.
Where are you going with this? Mel Gibson, I'm with you. I've got you, I'm with you. Sorry. Anyway. Yes, anti-Semitic Mel Gibson, who looks remarkably like a South Park character, doesn't he, when he grows a beard?
Yeah, he does, actually.
He's got a really...
Yes.
Yeah, he's got a strange little smile, like a South Park character. Have you ever watched What Women Want?
No.
I remember watching
I already know What Women Want, Tom.
What's that?
A funny history podcast.
Cheese Toasties. It's one of those films. It came out in the mid-90s, I think, didn't it? And I remember watching a bit of it because I stumbled across it on TV and thinking, wow, that's not aged very well. That's sexist. This is Mel Gibson walking around finding out what women really want, and it's just women gossiping about clothes and shoes and handbags and children and breastfeeding and ironing. Wonderfully sexist. Turtle submarine. So it was used once, very unsuccessfully.
Turtle submarine. Sorry.
In an attempt to sink a British ship in the New York harbour in 1776. A remarkably shit invention that didn't do its job very well at all, but bizarrely had some remarkably advanced features. It was also the first submarine to be used in war, so that's one of its biggest claims to fame.
What was its remarkably advanced features, Tom? Did it have a Wendy's?
No, it wasn't quite large enough.
Clearly not American then.
No. Just make it bigger. I remember going to a motor car museum in New Zealand and had lots of American muscle cars from the sort of 50s. And from what I could gather from reading about these cars, all of the American car manufacturers back in the 50s just used to add 2 cylinders to their car to make it sell better. So they just got to the stage where it's like a 50-cylinder. A 50-cylinder Ford. Can you really think of other ways of outdoing each other? Anyway, I will come on to its advanced features shortly. It has been attributed, this submarine, to a chap called David Bushnell, but it's widely accepted that another chap called Isaac Doolittle contributed as much, if not more, to the invention. In fact, from my research, it would appear that the only good bits of the invention were made by Mr. Doolittle. Bushnell created all the shit bits that didn't really work very well. So it's a sort of Sam and Tom relationship here, and I'll let listeners decide who is who.
Oh.
There's not much to say about Bushnell that's particularly interesting. He had a wife, some kids, 2 legs, an equal number of arms, a head. He slept at night.
All right, show off.
Did his shit during the day. Standard stuff, really. He studied at Yale College. That's reasonably important. A forerunner to the university, as far as I know. Doolittle was actually quite hard-working and productive, despite his name, and he was basically an engineer, a very religious one too. He had 9 children, every sperm is sacred and all that jazz. And he ran a very successful shop near Yale College, repairing clocks and doing other little mechanical things. He also sold big bells.
Is that a joke? Or...
No, he did sell big bells.
Okay.
I just thought I'd leave a pause just in case you wanted to add anything.
Don't think I need to.
And now the turtle. It looked like a giant hazelnut.
Yes. A giant hazelnut?
Yeah, it did look like a giant hazelnut with enough room for a man to sit inside. And the shell was made of oak and bound together with iron hoops.
Didn't they call it the hazelnut then?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's not a very threatening name.
No, neither's a turtle, really, is it? Unless it's a very randy turtle that hasn't had much food for a few days. It supposedly looked like 2 turtles side by side. Which is it's a strange thing to think, isn't it, when you look at something that looks like a hazelnut, to think, oh, that also looks like 2 turtles scissoring. Anyway.
Yes.
It had enough...
I mean, to be honest, it's a family classic in the Datta-Paulin household, though, to laugh heartily at a hazelnut when bought out at Christmas and go, ha-ha, look at the lesbian turtles. To be fair, we call it the lesbian turtle nut in our house.
The lesbian turtle nut?
Yeah, it doesn't translate very well from the original German.
What do you call a walnut?
What do we call a walnut? We call it a crispy brain. A fun-sized crispy brain.
A Brazil?
We call the slug fossils.
Very good. Cashews?
Mice kidneys.
Peanuts?
They're just peanuts.
Oh, fair enough. So the shell was made of oak, bound together with iron hoops, much like a barrel. It was 3 metres long, 2 metres tall, and about 1 metre wide, hence not having a Taco Bell. It had some glass panels on the top to let in some light, and for good indoor-outdoor flow.
You don't want that on a submarine.
Well, I think it's to give the feel.
Indoor-outdoor flow is not.
You want the feel of good indoor-outdoor flow, not necessarily any flow itself.
It's good for the feng shui.
Yeah. It just doesn't. You
Architectural
don't want
flow.
to feel too claustrophobic. You want to just bring the two together, the indoor and the outdoor. All of the mechanical instruments inside, so the buttons, the levers, the twiddlers, the cockwangles, the Yankee pulls, the tickle nips, etc., were all covered in something called Foxfire.
Ooh.
Have you heard of that before?
I've heard of Firefox.
What's a fire? Oh, yes, that's a browser, isn't it? But the
Historic browser,
Foxfire does sound a little bit like something that happens in Liverpool on New Year's Eve, doesn't it? But it's...
Someone setting fire to a fox.
There's some dead foxes, yeah.
Hey,
found some dead foxes. Hey, shock them on the mattress.
So many dead foxes.
I got some badgers as well, hey. Badgers. Yeah, so a foxfire is a really cool natural luminescent substance from some types of fungi. It's fungi. And it glows sort of green. Fungi. Although, unfortunately, it didn't work when temperatures dropped, i.e. when you're underwater. So the most beautiful thing about the submarine, in my opinion, is the very steampunk-esque H.G. Wells-style controls. So I made up some silly words a moment ago, but the pictures and the descriptions of this device that captivated me from the outset make it look like a cross between Wallace and Gromit's rocket and a Dick Van Dyke one-man band from Mary Poppins.
Ooh.
You know, It's a Jolly Holiday with Wallace. Eating all the cheese that we can.
Yeah, yes.
And what makes it even better is the picture in my Encyclopedia Britannica and a popular picture on the internet.
You're encyclopedia.
Yeah, I went awful push for a moment there. A picture in the Encyclopedia Britannica. And a very popular picture on the internet from 1885. And I'd like to point out, by the way, that my Encyclopedia Britannica correctly cited this picture and told me it was from 1885, whereas all the versions on the internet just said 19th century. That's what you get when you pay 30 quid for a 35-year-old encyclopedia.
It's a big money, isn't it?
You know, you just get that little bit extra. Anyway, the picture has this chap operating the turtle, and he's got a moustache, a suit, a waistcoat, a nice pair of shoes, and he's operating this thing. He's pressing one thing down with his foot, he's waggling another thing with one hand, yanking on another with his other arm, blowing through a hole to move something else, pressing down with his arse to control the speed or something. It's ridiculous. It's wonderfully ridiculous. All of these intricate, well-designed, I say well-designed, parts of them were well-designed, controls and mechanical parts were the work of Doolittle. And in all seriousness, there were a lot of them, and many of them were very innovative. Apparently, the Turtle had the first underwater depth gauge, the first clockwork detonated explosive, and most impressively of all, I actually had to reread this a couple of times, the first ever underwater propeller. I shit you not. This guy invented the propeller, which I think was actually powered by hand. So the guy that was in operating this was actually just whirling it around. Yeah. And it probably explains actually why it moved at a staggering 3 miles per hour if the propeller was operated by a bloke. Anyway.
Okay, that's faster than I thought it would be, to be fair.
Well, I mean, yeah. I do still think someone could have swum out and, done whatever the submarine was supposed to do faster. But anyway, on the subject of inconspicuousness... Now think about...
Wasn't it designed to drill a hole in the bottom of a ship, or am I spoiling that?
That's where we are about to go on to that. On the subject of inconspicuous, now think about the speed, and now take into account that the submarine could only hold enough air for 30 minutes, so the Turtle would have to come up every couple of kilometres for air, which wasn't really ideal, as we'll find out. So the Turtle was only ever used once, as I mentioned at the start, on September the 6th, 1776, piloted by Sergeant Lee. The plan was, as the Turtle had been designed for, to sneak up on the British ship, the Eagle, which was in New York Harbour, and to use a screw to attach an explosive to the hull of the ship. Simple, right? Well, to start with, it took Lee 2 hours to get to the ship, presumably with a lot of lever turning and a very sore shoulder. He couldn't see very much because it was evening and the sun was setting and the Foxfire wasn't working because it was too cold. There was also a strong current to contend with, and when Lee finally did get to the boat, things got very comical indeed. He was probably knackered from all the wanking, sort of lever turning, and also probably suffering from carbon dioxide poisoning. He made the mistake of starting the clockwork detonator and then realised he couldn't actually attach it to the ship, which he was supposed to drill it into the ship. Now you can imagine the scene. Lee is panicking as the timer counts down. Eventually he gives up, lets the explosive go in the water, makes his exceptionally slow getaway, and the explosive drifts away and blows up far away from anyone. Doesn't achieve anything. Not long after, the British sunk a ship that was transporting the submarine, and it was gone forever. Why, Your Honour. A few years later, Bushnell, the highly successful military inventor, planned to sink some British ships by floating some kegs of gunpowder towards them, like river mines. Not one of the kegs hit a British ship, but there were 2 casualties, 2 kids who played with one that had washed up on a shore. So good old Bushnell wasn't really very good at what he did.
No. Although, to be fair, fire ships as an idea for basically scaring and scattering enemy shipping does work.
Fire
Historically,
ships.
it was used quite a lot.
Yes, well...
and this is just a really simple, cheap version of that.
Yeah, I guess that you could see it coming, can't you? You can see a fire ship coming. And this is what they were trying to...
Well, I suppose so, yes. It doesn't. Yeah, the element of surprise doesn't really work with a fire ship because they were bloody useless and just designed to scare you. So, I suppose, yes, you have a point.
On the subject of fire and the Navy, I was tempted to talk about Greek fire.
Yes.
That's quite an interesting one, isn't it? We'll maybe pocket that one for another time. 2 US submarines have been named after Bushnell, one from the First World War and one from the Second World War. Now, I've got an honorary mention here, which is Dazzle Camouflage, invented by British artist Norman Wilkinson. Have you heard about Dazzle Camouflage?
I do know of Dazzle Camouflage.
It's wonderful.
Beautiful and fascinating.
It is, isn't it? Wilkinson, so you'll know a bit about this, but our listeners might not. Wilkinson was a Royal Navy volunteer during the First World War, and whilst patrolling for U-boats and also minesweeping in the English Channel, he had a eureka moment. Why would you try to camouflage a ship when the camouflage is never going to work at sea? The ship is always going to stand out. Instead, give them the old razzle-dazzle, razzle-dazzle them. Wilkinson's idea...
by painting the side of a battleship with a picture of Uncle Ben. On the other side, advertise... Coca-Cola.
Da, da, da.
Fund your war the old-fashioned way with advertising.
About poker. For online poker. That would have worked a bit better.
Yes.
Anyway. So Wilkinson's idea was to make ships very obvious but confusing with geometric designs that made it hard for U-boats to work out which way and at what speed the ships were going. And these ships...
yes, make them look like a 90s pencil case.
Oh, yes. They were a bit zebra-like as well, one or two of them as well, weren't they? But you are right. They looked very much like an early 90s sleeping bag / wallpaper / Queen video.
Yeah. Just imagine the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme tune, kind of title sequence, but everything is grey.
The zebra thing. Zebras have apparently evolved... their pattern because as a herd the patterns can dazzle and confuse predators a little bit. Wilkinson was a conventional artist, by the way, and modern geometric art was in its infancy, so things like cubism that was only created in the 1910s, so the same decade as Wilkinson's idea. A modern demonstration impressed, amongst other people, King George V. Why did I put modern demonstration? A demonstration impressed, amongst other people, King George V, and the Naval High Command was willing to give it a shot also. Most of the models used to test out the designs and the theory are still owned by the Imperial War Museum, by the way. So, might be in one of their museums in London. They're certainly not at Duxford, which is one of our favourite haunts, / was one of our favourite haunts, before we became Tier 4.
Yes, before Santa got you into Tier 4.
Yep. Around, a 14-year-old Santa who's not playing by the rules.
No, Santa, I want to sit on your knee. Rules is rules. Please, Mr. Berry. My dad says you're not allowed. Rules are rules.
They're there for a reason. They're written on the board.
No.
Around 2,300 British ships were painted with Dazzle paint jobs, and within the last year of the First World War, and the American
2,300. Can you even imagine owning 2,300 ships?
Well, this was the
What a stupidly large number of boats.
This is the British Empire.
Oh, well, in that case, yes, totally.
This was not long before the largest empire the world has ever known. What was it, in 1918? The American Navy had over 1,200 ships painted this way around the same time, and dazzle painting was again used by the Americans and the British during the Second World War. There were even some experiments to see if it worked on airplanes by the Americans. And Sea Shepherd, so the marine conservation charity that likes to pester Japanese whalers, they used dazzle paintings on their ship, although as a tactic I think it's almost completely redundant now with radar technology. Anyway, the evidence for its effectiveness is non-existent. Attempts have been made to establish whether or not it worked, but the results are inconclusive. But I did see a few references to a modern study that suggested that boats weren't fast-moving enough to be effective, and actually it would work better on land with things like tanks. But I can't help but feel that if you're a tank in a desert, you might be better off being painted like a desert. Unless you're a tank in a herd of zebras.
Yes, wow, yeah.
Or in a herd of 80s throwbacks with long shirts.
Or if you're a zebra in a herd of tanks.
Yes, paint the zebras. Yeah, paint the zebras like tanks.
Yes.
I'm not sure that was discussed in this paper, to be honest.
Well, that's because they didn't have the brain of me.
The brain of me.
The brain of
the
me.
Autobiography of Sam. The brain of me. I just like this idea of the razzly-dazzly boats, you know? Sassing it out against the German U-boats.
They need some special horns to kind of announce their arrival, don't they? This standard foghorn just isn't quite fabulous enough.
They do need something more fabulous, darling.
Just razzle dazzle.
Da 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 da. We're coming, darlings. There's no U-boat gonna get us.
This is the HMS Craig Revel Horwood. Well, I thought the Paso Doble was passé, but those torpedoes, darling.
I loved your bomb work. Absolutely loved your bomb work.
That is what I came here to see.
You're right though. They could have just played music, couldn't they? Because they were trying to, they weren't bothering about it. They weren't worried about being spotted. They were just accepting that they might get spotted. They should have played a bit of Wham, didn't they?
Just enjoy it, yeah.
Just make it. Just camp it out. Bit of Kylie. Bang out a bit of
Navy.
Kylie. You spin me right round, baby, right round. With your U-boat, baby, right round, right round.
Yes. With a 30-mile turning circle right round. Marvellous.
Trying to think of any more 80s songs that could be used for a boat. Naval terminology. Right, I've got my 80s songs, I've got my naval I've got my nautical terms. Wake me up before you blow.
Good. Very good.
And relevant.
Burning down the ship, talking heads. Oh, why didn't I think of that before?
Bombs will tear us apart again.
Bridge blown into troubled water.
You shook us all night long.
Yes.
We're gonna start a fire.
Marvellous. That was very interesting, Tom. Very interesting. The submarine was pretty far ahead of its time, has to be said, wasn't it?
Well, I think
as these things go, it was terrible. But
we've been mocking it, haven't we? Well, I've been mocking it primarily, but that's how these things evolve, isn't it? People have people fail more often than they succeed, don't they? And if you're not failing, then you're obviously not stretching the limits enough. So these guys were pushing the limits with this submarine.
They were pushing the envelope.
They were pushing that envelope through the letterbox.
It's a bit of pioneering American spirit.
That's exactly the Yankee spirit. That's exactly what it was, and it was shit, but it led to great things. And actually, as a whole, it was shit. but many of the components were very, very advanced, as I've said. So,
much like American cars.
Yeah, exactly. If you just made a few adjustments, it wouldn't be quite as shit.
Much like America, frankly. Hello, listeners. Marvellous. Well, Tom, I've gone a bit left field this week. I haven't gone for one specific story. I've gone for a brief history of birds in warfare, or birds as weapons. And I don't mean birds...
Birds as in the lasses?
No, not even them, Tom. Not even them, because they're quite badass.
They can be, can't they? As long as they're not in a
They
Mel
can be
Gibson
quite
film.
badass.
Oh,
No.
but what happens if my shirt gets covered in blood? Oh, what will I do?
Well, I imagine my shirt will fall off.
My bosom will bounce around. I hope they look pert, because that's all I care about as a woman.
Oh, lordy lord, how will I get through this medieval epic without my push-up bra? No, Tom, I'm talking about the avian birds. The avian birds. And I don't mean as messenger pigeons or as kind of photographic or reconnaissance spies, which is very, very real things, obviously, birds are used for. I mean actual birds as actual weapons.
Or pigeons in the Kremlin,
Yep.
sitting on a park bench, you know, with a newspaper.
Yeah. Well, 3 cours for Khrushchev. No, well, they've put radio antenna in birds before. They put cameras on them.
Perverts.
Yes. Yes. Really don't want to know what pigeons get up to. No, I mean actual birds as actual weapons.
Pigeons are feral, aren't they? I learnt this the other day. I can't remember where I learnt it. But all those pigeons you get at places like Piccadilly Circus are feral. So they're domesticated pigeons that have got loose.
Yes, yeah.
Didn't realise that.
Yeah, because wild pigeons are completely different. They're very much smaller.
You get wild pigeons in New Zealand. The wood pigeon is a really fat bird.
Yeah.
Anyway. Who'd have thought we'd get on some fascinating pigeon chat?
Yes, some ornithology. Lovely. Shame none of it's making the cut. Actually, God, it has to, because it's kind of relevant to the story. But I was inspired to do birds as weapons. Going back to our episode on revenge, it was episode 38, Halcyon Days, and Olga of Kiev, who promised to spare a city if the residents each caught a starling and brought it out to her as a peace offering, at which point she tied burning cloths to the birds' legs and released them to fly back into the thatched roofs where they'd been nesting.
Job.
The absolute bitch. And I was kind of inspired by this to look at animals in warfare, and it turns out that actually we've been behaving like absolute cocks to birds for a very, very long time in the name of killing each other.
Why does that not surprise me?
Yeah. So today I'm going to present to you, Tom, a few of the ways through the ages we've been really very unpleasant to nature in our quest to be very unpleasant to each other.
Lovely.
And first up, and this one is cheating a little bit, we're off to the Ming Dynasty in China, which ran from 1368 to 1644 and is, of course, beloved of Antiques Roadshow fans everywhere who start salivating at the first sight of Ming
It
vase.
just smelt a lot, didn't it? It was 200 years of Pong.
It was, yes. Yeah, just very unattractive people generally. Just fantastic monobrows all round. Crooked teeth. And the Ming were early adopters of gunpowder weapons. I got 8 toes, 8 fingers, and 8 guns.
But I got some lovely vases. Would you like a vase?
My earthenware is highly collectible. That's all I got's going for me, what with the halitosis and all.
There's no need for a two-child policy back here. Nobody's shagging
We'll be
nobody.
lucky if we get one. No.
I mean, I'm butt ugly, but I'm still not shagging nobody else.
Our 1 to 10 scale of attractiveness has to have a decimal system. 0.5. And I'm the belle of the village.
Just in case anyone is completely lost, in the UK you might say that someone is a minger.
Yes.
Or they ming.
Which does
if
not
they
mean
smell.
that they are of a... Yes. Yeah. That does not, of course, mean that they are of the medieval Chinese dynasty. Which means that they're ugly. So the Ming were early adopters of gunpowder weapons, and one of the most versatile and vicious that they used was the, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, do apologise, the Shenhuo Feiya, or the Divine Fire Flying Crow.
What?
Yes. Oh, sorry. I do apologise.
Attempt that again.
The Shenhuo Feiya.
Oh, you have a what's it stuck up your nose?
Yes. Your mother is a belt sander. Yes, the Shenhuo Feiya. Oh, sorry, no, I said that wrong again. I do apologise. I apologise, Your Holiness. I didn't mean it. Or Divine Fire Flying Crow. And to picture this weapon, Tom, it's a very simple image in your mind.
Divine Fire Flying Crow.
The Divine Fire Flying Crow.
That sounds like someone who lives in Glastonbury, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
And sells crystals on the street.
Yes, no, not meth.
No, just crystals.
Yeah, Divine Fire Flying Crow is the kind of person who would wobble a crystal above your head to heal you and then tell you that Bill Gates is going to give you COVID. The kind of hippie who also believes in QAnon. To picture this weapon, Tom, I want you to take a firework, just your average standard household firework.
The ones we keep under the sink. Yep, okay.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Just next to, between the firelighters, the terps, and
all the kids' toys.
All the kids' toys, the electric bug zapper. And I want you to take this firework, Tom, from under your sink, and I want you to stick it right up a crow's arse. Now, contemporary illustrations of the various versions of this weapon, and there are quite a few out there if you want to Google image search them, range from a papier-mâché crow with a very large rectal rocket to quite literally a crow and hilariously and slightly unfairly
someone's... Rectal rocket would be my wrestler's name.
For me, it's just an unfortunately placed herb garden, Tom.
Very bitter. Very bitter, this rocket. More bitter than usual.
Yes.
Very earthy.
Really lingers on the tongue. Yes, rustic. It really takes me back to an Italian farmhouse, this. So it ranges from a papier-mâché crow with a very large rectal rocket to a literal crow, and very unfairly, Tom, the crow appears to have had its beak taped shut to avoid complaints. And this is where a theory of aerodynamics would really have come in helpful, Tom. A genuine crow with 4 rockets pointing downwards strapped under its wings, which seems to be both somewhat overpowered and rather ineffective. Kind of the Jeremy Clarkson of bird missile hybrids. And the idea was that these birds, masters of gliding and fairly innocuous, would be fired en masse at slow-moving enemies. From around 2 kilometres away, they would arc across the sky before the rocket burned out, and the bird would glide to its target before deploying a number of possible payloads. It could either be filled with high explosives or a small charge with lots of shrapnel in it. It could release a cloud of poisonous sulphur, or it could drop darts or caltrops. And I don't know do you know what a caltrop is, Tom?
No, I don't know what a caltrop is.
Oh, there's a thing called the caltrop effect, which is the idea that when dropped, things with sharp edges will always land sharp side up. So, for example, when you drop a plug, it will always be upturned and can be very painful and dangerous to walk on. So, essentially, these birds would explode and spray the battlefield with Lego to break up enemy formations. Yeah. Exactly. The paper bird actually worked very well. The seemingly real crow with 4 boosters on it, apparently not so much. It just spiralled violently into the sky before the poor bastard bird exploded. Nevertheless, the idea did make it to Europe with a very nice diagram of a spectacularly sharting dove being presented in a 1420s...
Of all the birds to choose to do a shart, why a dove? A beautiful dove, a symbol of peace, and you've got it sharting. What's wrong with a feral pigeon sharting? Why can't you have a dove kissing?
Well, less militarily valuable.
True, unless you're looking for peace.
I mean, but yes, well, that's the thing. It's a trick, Tom. It's like the Red Wedding.
Yeah.
You think it's a peace offering,
and then it sharts on
you, and then it sharts. It sharts Lego all over you.
I'm not a dove. I'm a crow that's been painted white.
I mean, it's entirely possible that the author of this manuscript just ran out of ink, didn't bother colouring in the dove. But yes, it was presented in a 1420s treatise entitled, and this is my excellent, never having spoken Latin before Latin, Bellicorum Instrumentorum Liber cum Figuris et Fictilis Lictoris Conscriptus, or Illustrated and Encrypted Book of War Instruments.
Stick a what
by
up your arse,
Giovanni Fontana.
Stick a what up your ass in the past
A
tense.
firework, Tom, and shoot me at a Chinaman. And this was a long-lived invention, the firework up a bird's arse, that wasn't solely, in fact, limited to birds. There is an amazingly illustrated German artillery manual, or Furwork book, God bless the Germans.
Book about cheese? I just don't know what's going on in this episode, Sam.
Tom, it's a wonderful interjection, a fantastic joke, but it's literally called a firework book. A firework book. There's this German illustrated artillery manual.
That's a very good impression of a deaf person, Sam. Well done.
So, you bastard. That is not, audience, what I was intending. Tom's merely a cock. From 1584, this manuscript, which shows a bird and a cat wearing apparently jetpacks.
Right.
Whilst being propelled at speed towards a walled city.
You're just describing crazy birds, aren't you?
Yeah, Angry Birds,
sorry,
yes.
Angry Birds.
Angry Birds, yes, and also Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah.
But there's genuinely, it's a cat and a bird shooting at great speed towards a city with rockets strapped to their backs. And here's a quote, Tom, on how to use a cat in battle from this manuscript, and it was translated by Mitch Frass from Pennsylvania University, or the University of Pennsylvania. Create a small sack like a fire arrow. If you would like to get at a town or castle, obtain a cat from that place. Bind the sack to the back of the cat, ignite it, and let it glow well, and thereafter let the cat go, so it runs to the nearest castle or town, and out of fear it sinks to hide itself, where it ends up in a barn of hay or straw, and it will be ignited. So not so much a jetpack as a suicide vest, but essentially strap a bomb to a cat. The cat is terrified, the cat runs towards a barn in the castle, hides there, and the castle burns down.
Nice.
Genius. Or, of course, Tom, as the German new wave band Nina's great-great-great-great-great-grandmother once famously sang, "You and I near a little town, catch a cat and pin it down, set them free at the break of dawn, with a flaming backpack on. Back at castle, chaps in armour really couldn't be less calm as flailing wildly in the skies, 99 flaming cats die."
Nice. You wrote that down, didn't you? I don't believe you're that good at ad-libbing.
I did write that down, Tom. I did write that down. And incidentally, here's a lovely German phrase for you. 99 flammend Katzen. 99 flaming cats. So all those episodes ago, Tom, when we talked about Olga of Kiev burning the Drevlians, way back in the 10th century this happened, or as we call it, episode 38, we both said at the time, like, fuck, that happened. That's clearly just chroniclers talking shite. When she released the birds to burn down the town. But actually, this same tactic was being suggested in military manuals 600 years later, so maybe there was something to it. Incidentally, by this time, by the 15th, 16th century, the Chinese and Japanese had gone larger and scaled up and were doodling pictures of explosive-packed cows and bulls and oxen sent stampeding towards an enemy force, which, they would have gone off with a hell of a bang.
That goes back, doesn't it? Is that episode 3 where we talk about Hannibal?
No, it's episode 1, Tom. It's a copy and paste from what Hannibal did against the Romans in the Second Punic War. That's right. Or as we like to call it, our pilot episode, in which you talked about old Quintus the Delayer.
That's right. Quintus Fabius Vericosus.
Vericosus, that's right. Warty Fabian.
Fabius, yeah.
Warty-faced Fabian, yeah. So history just repeats itself, doesn't it? And we've run out of material for this podcast.
We haven't even reached 100 episodes and we're repeating content.
Perilously close, but we're not quite there yet. But there is slightly more, Tom, and I'll go through this very quickly, because fast forward 300 years and the British and Americans were at it again. During World War II, a guy called B.F. Skinner from Harvard University trained pigeons to peck at an image of the German battleship Bismarck to get treats. The image would appear in one of 3 windows, left, middle or right. He then put the pigeons in a gliding missile with fins, controlled by whichever of the windows the birds pecked at. Left for the left, right for the right, and straight ahead in the middle. The idea was that this bird bomb, so just scaled up the idea, would then be launched close to a battleship, and spotting it out the window and associating it with treats, the birds would then steer the bomb towards the ship.
Oh, that's genius. I wondered where that was going.
And you know what, Tom? It fucking worked. It worked absolutely amazingly well. Pigeons are incredibly well suited to being trained like this. It's how homing pigeons and carrier pigeons work. They recognise landmarks and they recognise shapes and rivers and roads and use them to navigate back home. And you know, it's quite a famous statistic in the UK that the UK is obsessed with racing pigeons, or used to be back in the day. And the speed of racing pigeons increased markedly once Britain built its motorway network, because the birds had a very efficient route home to follow. They weren't relying on rivers anymore. Yeah, and so their speeds increased dramatically because they just follow shapes and signs. So the idea worked incredibly well. It did have its limitations. You had to train the pigeons for very specific targets to stop it from careering in a seed-filled red mist towards the first rowboat it spotted. But as long as you had a few weeks to train it to sink the turpits, they were very reliable weapons.
No, this is Mr. Miggins. Peck Mr. Miggins, who won last year's 100-kilometre pigeon race.
Yes.
And won the prize gherkin. Peck Mr. Miggins. Now,
left a bit,
shit
left
on
a
his
bit.
head.
There's his house.
Shit on his head.
Yeah. There were dozens of 1960s pornographers just training the birds to go after boobs and strapping cameras to them in a Benny Hill-esque attempt at perving on young ladies.
And now when you find a porno mag in a bush, pick it up. That's it, here's a treat. Now pick it up again. Here's a treat.
That's a treat for you and me.
And if you find a lady's underwear on the washing line, pick it off.
Now bring it home. Bring it to Uncle Nigel. Yes, that's right. Bring it. Bring it. And put it down.
On
that's
my
right.
head. That's right.
Put it on my face.
head.
Knock, knock. Nigel? Nigel, what are you doing in there? Nothing, Mother. Nothing, Mother.
Shouldn't you be at work? Mother, I'm 35 now.
Stop asking me questions.
When's tea, Mother?
Yes.
I don't like fish fingers.
I want sponge pudding. Fun as this segue is, unfortunately, pigeon bombs were out technologied, so they worked. They genuinely did work very, very well. Unfortunately, they came along at roughly the same time as radar-guided bombs, which took some of the risk and training time out of the equation. Although, had radar never been invented, who knows? Jet fighters today could be firing pigeon-guided bombs. Still, the theory worked better than Soviet dog bombs. Have you heard of them, Tom?
Now, this is the one of them that I think I have heard.
It's quite well known, yeah.
Yeah. I haven't heard it. I didn't know the other ones.
Yeah, so the Soviets trained dogs, and the dogs would have cases full of explosives on their back with a big stick poking out, which would act as a trigger. And they trained them to go and hide under tanks when they were scared.
That's right.
Which, in theory, would cause them to run under the nearest German tank and cause it to explode. Unfortunately, the Russians, when they were training the dogs, didn't have any German tanks. They only had Russian ones. And so, once released, the dogs immediately ran to the nearest friendly tank, hid underneath it, and blew it up. So, there you go. Oopski. And finally, Tom, in our last avian weapon of mass destruction, we have the British chicken mine.
Ooh.
Have you heard of the British chicken mine, Tom?
I have not heard of the British chicken mine. Was that invented by Colonel Sanders?
Well, Tom, it was a blend of 12 herbs and spices, one of which was uranium, one of which was polonium. This was a nuclear weapon powered by chickens, Tom.
Wow.
This is the most British invention you'll ever come across. Basically, in the throes of the Cold War, the British wanted to develop a scorched earth weapon to plant on the West German border should those dastardly commies invade. So they came up with the idea of burying underground nuclear
Germans.
bombs.
You haven't got much choice here. We're going to scorch everything.
There's literally nothing we can do other than to nuke the fuck out of Germany.
And everything
No,
between
we've
Russia and us.
We've considered all options. We've also decided, that we haven't really decided, it was thrust upon us, that also, just for safety's sake, we should also plant these bombs under Paris. We've tried to come up with an option which doesn't involve nuking everyone, and unfortunately it's just not happening. Sorry, fellas, auf Wiedersehen.
But, sir, couldn't we just nuke the Russians?
Oh, don't be stupid. Where's the fun in that?
No, we can't nuke the Russians anyway, because they've invaded Germany, so the Russians are in Germany. We just have to nuke Germany. So, I mean, this was obviously an insane idea from the outset. The idea of burying underground nuclear border mines, because fuck civilians. Unfortunately, well, Dresden wouldn't be the first time. And I know your feelings on Dresden. Unfortunately, the Russians are very good at fighting in winter, and nuclear bombs are very finicky things. Unfortunately, it requires some expertise, and frankly, they're snowflakes, Tom. Nuclear weapons, they need things just right, and they very much don't like the cold. And the Brits were worried that their carefully planted mines wouldn't go off and raze the German countryside if the Russians invaded in the winter. And their solution was ingenious.
So let's just clarify this. The British were very responsibly nuclear mining Germany.
They wanted to.
It's horrendous.
Much like, and it doesn't get talked about very much, Winston Churchill wanting to gas the Kurds in Iraq.
Crikey.
Which is a policy that didn't age well. Unfortunately, the RAF didn't have gas canisters at the time, which put paid to his plans. So yes, the British solution to this was absolutely ingenious. They made a nuclear bomb that had a chicken coop built in. 5 or 6 chickens were put into this nuclear bomb with enough food to keep them going for a week, or a couple of weeks, and essentially were laid to roost in there. And the mine was planted, and the chickens gave off enough body heat to keep the mechanical bits of this nuclear bomb working.
That's not ridiculous.
It worked fantastically well. Unfortunately, those bloody hippies came along, Tom, and pointed out that nuking Germany to stop the Russians wasn't an ethically sound policy, and so the idea was shelved. But the chicken mine, again, worked fantastically well as a concept. It was more than enough to keep a nuclear bomb active underground for a couple of weeks. So there you go, Tom. A brief 1,000-year history of setting fire to and blowing things up by birds.
Excellent choice.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of took you in that direction, but I'm glad something did.
Yes.
It's a wonderfully surreal way to go with your research.
Oh, I thought so. Well, I did have a couple of other options. There was a book that I was looking at called the Bella Fortis, I think it was called, which was just a very funny medieval field manual of siege weaponry, a lot of which was completely made up.
Oh, have I
it
not
just
done
didn't
that?
exist. Nonsense. It was absolute nonsense, but unfortunately it just didn't translate very well into spoken form because it's all about the pictures. Look up Bella Fortis online, it's fantastic. It's got weapons designed to kind of hack the legs off 100 peasant soldiers at a time. It's got weapons designed to pluck rich men off their horses. Rich men worth ransoming whilst at the same time massacring poor men if you pluck them off the horses.
Look at this.
It's essentially a pair of scissors with steel teeth in it, which would bed into the armour of a rich man but would just eviscerate a poor man. And it also has sections on source... If I had all the scissors in the world. And it's also got a section on how to run the perfect bath and Satanism. Oh, and chastity belts as well.
Just to read this digest.
Because medieval manuscripts, it's people's friend, Tom. It's the kind of thing you pick up in a doctor's surgery. There we go.
They are good pictures of the Bella Fortis, aren't they? I'm sure I talked about one mad medieval military document.
You did.
But it wasn't that one, was it? It was something different.
No, and you went too far down your research and decided it was boring, but it was too late, so you talked about it anyway. Classic episode, do go look it up.
Yep. That sounds. It was the vegitis.
No, that's a yeast infection.
And delicious on toast.
Oh no! But yes, there you go. I was strongly considering doing that, but unfortunately, it just didn't translate very well into written form. But it gets an honourable mention.
Good job. Good job. Well, that rounds things off quite nicely, doesn't it?
It does. Should we think of a topic for our patrons episode? Well, actually, do you know what? We've got one lined up for our patrons episode next week, don't we?
What be
in
that?
a sense, because we said the other week that we should do an episode on showman, and I want to do an episode on showman.
Razzle dazzle them.
Razzle dazzle men. Yeah, should we do showman for the patrons?
Showmen or women, I'd like to point out.
All women, absolutely.
Show people.
He, she, it, they. and we can then do Failed Despots.
The
next public episode.
Failed Despots.
That's a couple of cracking episode
Good
topic
ideas.
And if you'd like to be a patron and hear that episode on Showman, I think there's a good... Now, how many patron-only episodes are there? I think there's probably nearly 20 patron-only episodes.
There's enough for a good day of vegging on the sofa.
There absolutely
Laughing
is, yeah.
heartily, probably every hour and a half.
5 to 8 minutes. A sensible chuckle. Yeah, you can find them all and so much more. Songs, doodles, print your own medals at patreon.com/thatwasgenius, where for only the price of a coffee from a coffee from a very expensive coffee shop, you can join us.
That's all.
Once a month. Just once. That's a once a month treat. You get 2 exclusive episodes every month. You also get songs, you get doodles, you get a lot. You get a lot, don't you, Tom? That's patreon.com/thatwasgenius.
VIP access to Sam and Tom's email address. Well, that was Genius one.
Yeah, that was geniuscast@gmail.com.
That one.
Where we cross-compare your email address when you come into to Patreon, and if you're not a Patreon, we just send it straight to spam. We just sell you details, frankly, to sex chat lines.
Yeah.
So if you want to be connected to hot single 50-year-olds in your area, do email us. That was geniuscast@gmail.com.
Pigeon perverts.
Pigeon perverts in your area. Yes, you can also join our Facebook meme sharing group. That was Genius, a funny history podcast group, where you can just share shit. Fun shit, happy shit.
Don't be racist, though.
Don't be racist.
Do be nice to each other.
Just don't be a racist. And none of our fans are racist, he says, hoping. Well, apart from Tom, but he's not a fan. Right, Tom, say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
And it's bye-bye from me, Sam, and we'll see you next week if you're a patron, 2 weeks' time if you're not. TTFN.